What is up, y'all? It is your boy Winston Wolf. I'm back. I just want to do a quick review. Do you remember when back in the day when you can just pick up a movie that had the Sundance seal on it and you knew it was gonna be worth watching? You're gonna be disturbed to a certain degree because it was gonna be a raw indie movie. Those days are long gone. But with Bones and All, this kind of takes you back to those days. It's gonna make you sad that those days don't exist anymore. That you could just go pick up something that had a Toronto Film Festival seal on it, or something like that, and know you were gonna be disturbed in a good way by it. You were gonna know that you couldn't watch it with your parents around, basically. But this, it's not as raw as those movies, but it takes you back, and it's sad because nowadays making a movie is so accessible to people that if you're like me and you've searched for good indie films, you've just been burned way too many times by just straight up garbage, by just straight up fake artsy movies, just all this. But this is definitely a movie worth watching. And I'm going to say flat out, I started watching it with my arms crossed. I was like, all right, here we go. I pretty much just put it on just so I could have it playing in the background while I was on my phone. And I actually liked it. I more than liked it. If you still think about a movie the next day, you know it's a good movie. Again, it's not the greatest movie in the world, but as far as indie movies, for, to have it stay with you in today's climate, that's saying something. I'm not going to get into the movie because you could probably, not you, me, I could explain the plot in a minute or less. You could probably do it faster than that. But it's not all about that. It's not about the plot. You already know it's about two young cannibals. And it's a little more complicated than that, but like I said, it's not heavy on plot. It's more about, you know, the art of it, the acting, the moments. It's things like that. So I'm just going to talk about a few things. I assume you've already seen it. If you haven't already seen it, just come back and listen to me ramble for a couple minutes about it after you've seen it. But the one thing I want to know is, and it's bothered me with movies with like a supernatural element where you have people with certain conditions or powers like vampires and things like that. If they show that that's widespread, like in a vampire movie, they always run into other vampires. So does the government know about this? What's like I have to know more about that world and how it works. Because if this is like a widespread thing, then other people are going to know about it. There's going to be some kind of organizations, it just something. I have to, you can't just leave it hanging in the air like that. And it's not a make it or break it thing for me with this movie that they don't get into that. But they run into other, I think they call them feeders. And there's a slight supernatural element where they can smell each other. And I think when they feed on bodies, I don't know if it extends their life, but it gives them energy. Just, things like that. So, this isn't just them eating people out of some kind of fetish. It's some kind of species, it's some kind of breed of people. So I want to know, does the government know about this? Is their whole being, did it start from some virus? Was it some experiment? How did these people come about? I just want to know things like that. Those are things that when I'm watching it, I kind of get preoccupied with it. The other thing is, it just makes me sad that I haven't seen a Larry Clark movie in a long time. I'm talking about Larry Clark hasn't put out a movie, as far as I know, in a long time. And I love Larry Clark films. And this right here feels like this is the closest we're ever going to get to a Larry Clark film. And it's let me first tell you, there's nothing like a Larry Clark film, but you can see that the director is a definite fan and influenced by Larry Clark movies. You can tell. But I mean, for obvious reasons, they couldn't make their version of a Larry Clark film because it never would have got made. But there is definite DNA of Larry Clark in this movie. And the one thing I was thinking through the whole thing was, man, what if they would have gave this to Larry Clark first? Or what if, like, in some alternate universe, they were like, hey, we already have this version. Larry, why don't you remake this? We want to see your vision for it. And I was just thinking about how raw and just how much more I would love it. Larry Clark, I'm a huge Larry Clark fan. I know I'm not going to get into why people don't like him or why he's controversial. You already know why. If you don't, just Google it. But Larry Clark movies are, what I'm saying, it's a part of growing up to me. And it's a shame kids don't have their, equivalent of Larry Clark movies to all watch together and, trade and everything like that. It's a shame. And if you haven't seen Larry Clark movies, kids, come on. Kids, Bully, come on. Ken Park, if you can find it. Ken Park, Stop it. Get out of here. Another Day in Paradise? Another Day in Paradise. Stop it. Larry Clark has some classics. But going back to the thing where, I wanted some kind of explanation, some exposition. There's a part where they go to a watering hole, and like I said, they can sense each other. This cannibalism has some slight supernatural abilities, if you can call that supernatural, where they can sense each other. And they run into this older cannibal, and he kind of just talks about a few things. But that would have been a perfect chance to give some exposition, to give him, have him say, well, I heard, rumor is that, this is the result of just something. And I know this isn't the type of movie where you're trying to build a franchise or trying to build a universe or whatever, but just, nerds like me, it helps to, chill that part of your brain out that's just asking questions. Just asking questions. Does, how many people know about these people? Blah, blah, blah. How long have they been around? Things like that. I think that would have been a perfect opportunity. But Bones and All, I think a lot of people I think this falls into like a weird category, to where you're gonna have, people on dates going to see it, and the guy is gonna think it's a horror movie, and the girl is gonna think it's, like a Twilight type of movie, and they're both gonna be wrong. And there's just going to be a lot of confusion. So I don't know in the future how this movie is going to, or if it's going to be remembered. Because there's movies from even 5 years ago that I'll bring up. There were good little gems that kind of fell under the radar. And people would be like, what? I've never heard of that. And that's a shame, because there's so many hidden and missed movies, especially in recent years. Because like I said, there's just, the sheer amount of movies that have been made. Just because it's so much easier now. But I'm interested in how this movie is gonna be remembered, or if it's gonna be remembered at all. But it is a nice little film. That's probably the best way to put it. But the bottom line is it's worth your time, even if you're a super gore hound, whatever. This movie is worth watching. So Bones and All, 0 to 10 dog bones. That's my rating. I'll give it a 7.5. And that's a good 7.5. Anyways, Bones and All, check it out. It's your boy.